Live, and
We're live.
good morning to everybody, and welcome to Behind the Markets, the Unity Day edition. It is Tuesday. It is the Zambian Unity Day, if I'm correct. Yes, and that is the holiday that we are celebrating because we had Heroes and Unity Day, and today we are looking into. Obviously, we are continuing with our conversation. But Vernon, how has been this 4 day break? Been this break to commemorate the heroes of our nation, the warriors who fought for our freedom, and the warriors who have given us the freedom that we have today, Vernon. How has this been for you?
I think it has been okay, but regarding the essence of the holiday, I don't think we've attached much importance to it as what exactly we're celebrating. I think most I've just seen people taking days off, meeting up friends, lads that actually they haven't been with together for a long time. But I think also I've seen folks at church gathering. I think that is something nice. But regarding celebrating and remembering our heroes, I don't think we've done justice this year.
Well, I always say one of the best things we can do for the people who fought for what we have today and brought this, because remember, there were two parts to this. There are two parts to our freedom story. One was breaking away from the colonizer, and two was bringing 72 tribes together to form a nation. Okay, I think people really don't understand the miracle that is, because there are many nations right now struggling with just two, three tribes trying to get themselves together. Most of these ethnic wars that you see breaking out across our continent, Asia, you often see these are ethnic groups. In fact, even in America, by the way, where you start seeing Republicans and Democrats, that's a kind of tribalism that is causing such great division in their nation. And we've managed to cross over presidents from multiple tribes. We've managed to coexist without ethnic issues breaking into pure violence in this country. And we've managed to keep ourselves together without bloodshed against one another. There's a miracle that is to that we should be proud of ourselves as a country. And it, like I said, it does take a lot, because most people, whenever faced with a situation of multi ethnicity in any situation, do end up just splitting between each other, or one tribe just controlling another. That's been a problem across history, by the way. But that is one of the things why it's important to remember. You know, um, the I was listening to a conversation about what's it called? They were talking about Jewish holidays, or Jewish, not Jewish holidays, Jewish celebrations, because that's effectively public holidays that they have in the Bible. And they said unlike pagan celebrations, which were mostly a worshiping of nature, pagan celebrations are often the festival of the moon, the festival of the sun. But it's always a festival of something to do with nature.
Yeah.
Jewish holidays were, and they said this was a very important thing. Jewish holidays were put in place for remembrance. Okay, so it was the festival of, or maybe it was the day to remember the what's it called, the crossover, when the Passover, sorry, where they were spared. And the reason why they were told to remember these days is because it builds in gratitude. It always builds in gratitude into the people when you remember important days. And that's why holidays are actually meant for. That's the purpose they serve. Because a more grateful society is a more energized society, it's a more positive one. It's one that always looks forward with hope. So when you remember, Vernon, that you live in one of the few countries where 72 tribes have coexisted for over 60 years, for almost 60 years, without harming one another. Yes, we've argued, but without physically harming one another, and you've lived in a peaceful environment, you remember every day to thank God for the peaceful environment you live in. You don't have to wake up one day and see a bunch of rebels walking outside your door deciding to take you and your children captive. You don't have to fear one day that walking to the market is gonna result in gunshots blaring. You don't have to even think about that. We don't even fathom that in Zambia. That's the freedom we live with. Okay, and sometimes we forget that that's a blessing, and that's what holidays are supposed to be for. They're supposed to mark a blessing in your life, to remember what it cost you, because these things did not come without sacrifice. There are people who died so that 72 tribes could live together. There are people who struggled so that this all could happen. So I think everybody should always remember that this stuff isn't an entitlement. It came because people sacrificed their lives, their freedom, their lives. They lost family. They spent days in jail. They lost their youth. Okay, the very youth you treasure and you start to think is yours by what's it, by entitlement, that somebody else had to sacrifice. Somebody had to sacrifice going to school so that you could have that society that you have found so normal and become accustomed to. And the only problem I've noticed, when I was reading I'm in the part of the Bible where we're dealing with the kings, the kingdoms of Israel. And one of the things I've noticed that actually led to the fall of the kingdom of Israel and also the captivity and the idol worship that they started to face was a lot of them forgot what it took for them to get to the promised land. It was always the Israelites forgetting what it took. It took getting out of Egypt. It took crossing the Red Sea. It took the desert. It took the battles of the desert. It took the death of a generation, the wars of Joshua. It took all these things. And I think what starts to happen, what always tends to happen that makes a society ungrateful about what it took to get there is they start to forget. And that's what these holidays are meant for. But unfortunately, these holidays are usually marked as drinking days. So what ends up happening is we tend to forget what happens. But it is a good time to remember that the fact that many of us live together in harmony, when the history of the world, not just our continent, the world, that the moment two ethnic groups collided, they killed each other or one of them enslaved the other. Okay, those are just things that you should remember, and that gives you that when you wake up in the morning and you say, "What are 10 things to be grateful for?" Or be grateful that you live in a peaceful society, that many people can coexist in harmony with different languages and different backgrounds and different traditions, and they can come together, work in workplaces together. And we are not the same tribe, but
Yeah.
we've been doing a show together. Owners of the
Mhm.
show are not the same tribe, but we operate as one Zambia, one nation. We are both born together by the fact that we are one Zambia. In fact, usually I'll tell you one of the best groups of people who bring about the unity of a nation is its sports teams. The sports teams of a country are the people who all of a sudden bring together the unity of a country. When Muzala runs, we don't ask what tribe is that. No, that is a man representing Zambia. Those 2 feet moving at the pace that they do represent the 19 to 20 million Zambian people, regardless of age, tribe, gender, no matter what. He represents every single one of us. And in those 2 feet, moving at the pace they do, represents the unity of this country. That's the power of sports, by the way. That's how important sports are to a country because they always break down the ethnic lines. I'll tell you, I was watching cricket highlights yesterday. Yes, people, because I am a cricket fan. I was watching cricket highlights yesterday, and there's this player named the British captain had scored a century at one point. And in the crowd were these two Muslim looking guys, like screaming and shouting for him and celebrating for him. And I captured that moment in my mind and I realized there it is. That's the power of sports. People fight about religion and ethnicity, but it's a white guy, a white red-haired guy, ginger, who does well for his team, and all of a sudden these two Muslim guys who also represent the same country are celebrating for him because it's that moment. That's the beauty, by the way. That's why I said that's why I respect sports a lot because it does that a lot to people. So yeah, it's just something I wanted to bring out to everybody. But yes, we will be getting back to the mainstream conversations of behind the markets, and we'll be talking about that regularly. But we do have one question before we kicked in. I'll just bring it in from comment if I'm correct. Hamapobo who said, "Wow, amazing! Good morning, colleagues." Last time I saw again, you were discussing about debt restructuring and standstill agreements, but never watched. But because I had not enough times, it as it found me busy, I had a question to ask you. Well, it would be good to try and ask that question. Please go ahead, send your questions in. But today we will be discussing the conversation about discipline. That's our main conversation. But please, we're still free to take your questions in. Vernon, I know we lost you a bit yesterday, but just to recap, yesterday I started off with this chart to say Zambia is our biggest excuse as a country is to say, well, we're not a big economy. We're not a big economy because we're not a big population. We don't have the market size, or we don't have the size of physical land. Then I asked the question about the Nordic nations, and I said, well, take a look at them. These are tiny countries by population. These are tiny
Yeah.
countries by physical size compared to Zambia. Most of them are half the size of this country, but yet their economies are 20 to 40 times the size of our economies. I think the smallest one is Finland there, which is 297 billion, $97 billion, which is 15 times the Zambian economy. The question we should be asking ourselves, Vernon, is why? Why? What is it that we're lacking? Now, people will say, well, it's because these European countries colonized us. That's why. That's why they Viva Africa, whatever we want to say. The reality is, even colonization, by the way, it takes a lot of discipline, Vernon. People didn't just roll. There's this idea that white people just stumbled into our countries with guns and then decided to and we just slipped into their handcuffs by mistake. And then all of a sudden we were colonized. No, they arrived here in 1850, monitored you slowly, built relationships, got the lay of the land, understood what was going on. They spent about 40 years studying you before they decided to make a move to colonize you. Okay, before they turned Zambia into a protectorate in the early 1890s, 1900s, they spent about 40 years studying you people. Okay, thinking about who you are. Colonization is not just some gun where people just jumped off boats shooting at everybody and took land. Those whites would have died if they did that because they were outnumbered easily. They came in methodically. It was people coming in to explore your country, talking to your leadership, deciding, okay, which two tribes are at war with each other, or which two disagree with each other. You go make friends with that one. You go make friends with that one. They built slowly. Okay, what people don't understand is that took a lot of discipline. Okay, even evil itself is discipline. In fact, one of the most disciplined people in the Bible is actually the devil. Outside of God, the devil is actually the single most disciplined person because he actually is very tactical and consistent with his tactics and how he operates. So I wanted to tell everybody that be very careful of assuming that even these people who you want to mark as evil, they're very disciplined. But the point I'm trying to point out here is that Zambia is full of potential. We're a nation that's packed full of potential, Vernon. Packed. We always say Zambia has this many lakes, this many seas. We have gold, we have oil, we have this, but we're still poor. What does that tell you? We can have all this potential in the world, Vernon. Guys who have wonderful potential, but they never make it anywhere. We all know that. There's plenty of people who have wonderful potential in this world, but they can never make it. And what we often think is it's a lack of opportunity. Truly, in reality, most of our outcomes, Vernon, are a lack of discipline. Okay. Before we take off, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, really, yeah, discipline is really key whenever you're talking about one achieving something, and failure to do so, you find that it's not even witchcraft. It's not something prophetic. It's not something magical. No, it's just about discipline. People make it because they decide to do certain things away with. I was out. I was actually emceeing an event yesterday in Matero, and we had these guys from these TV stars from Mpali and whatnot. The
Mm,
Cosmas Ngandwe, and some of the things that they equally pointed out was I chose not to start drinking for me to be successful in my TV cinema career. It's an aspect of discipline. He didn't grow up in a place where there was no alcohol available. He didn't grow up in an environment or a community where there were no bars or nightclubs. It's not like he hasn't had money to go and club. He has had the money, more than actually he needs. But then he shared and said, I saw it with no relevance. And I also saw how people who drink turn out to be. There's little progress to start with. You have also not to talk about matters of, health at the end of the day. Similarly, uh, having a conversation with one gentleman, he's actually even a word counselor, Saulos. Equally was talking about the same things. He was saying the time I was starting out with my career, I was really a heavy drinker. Each time I'm going to perform, I will be drunk so that I can perform well. You know, people say, no, when you are drunk, then you can do better math. That's when you can solve things properly. That's when you think better. I actually even have a friend who says, I drive way better when I'm drunk. And whenever he's drunk, I'm never getting on the car. But you see, he says he was working for a guy, and whenever he's performing drunk, he would see only the guy taking a bottle of alcohol only on a weekend, on a Saturday. But then if you see this guy, he's a person who had lodges that had bars. He had a home which had a bar installed in the home, but was only drinking once over the weekend. But then after contemplating it, then realized that drinking is about self-control. It's about punishing so that you can enjoy later. It's about, prescribing and, creating a pattern for your life that you're trying to see at the end of the day be something burgeon into something that you be happy and proud about. So afterwards, he took a decision. Like you always say, you desire about something, and you take the steps so that you can then instigate that change so that you can have control over something. If you just contemplate and desire and dream for something to happen, it will only but becays as dreams. But when you take a step and do something about it, then you have the power over that addiction, over control, and that's called discipline. So ultimately, he shared saying, I have not tasted alcohol for now 14 years because I chose to discipline myself. Equally with money, it's the same scenario. If we can discipline ourselves and see that we change our narrative from exporting raw material to finished products from our natural resources, our economy will be skyrocketing with profit, and people will not only have more jobs, we're looking at more money in the economy, more activity, more incentives everywhere you look around. But because we're disciplined in a way of receiving the, what do you call it,
Handouts,
to my
handouts.
change, handouts. This is what we're used to. So we have to discipline ourselves and not always wait for the little package out of the how do you how do you dig up gold and give that gold to someone else, and then that person makes the best of it, and then you come and buy the same gold from someone else? It's rationally doesn't make sense. So I think we should have that change of mindset, see how we can govern ourselves in a different perspective, look at things differently, and see how we can control and enforce these discipline elements in ourselves. It starts with yourself. We cannot try to push people in government if yourself you don't do these things. So discipline is very key in a lot of things.
So I think let's even go to, there is a simple Bible verse that says where there is no vision, people shall perish. You know that's a statement everyone quotes and cites. But why, Vernon? Why is it that where there is no vision, people perish? It's simply because if you look at the right definition, Pastor Craig Groeschel's definition of the term discipline, he says very carefully, discipline is knowing what you want most over what you want now. So somebody will say, I want to build a career in acting. That's what they want most. But right now, their body is saying, man, I need a drink right now. That's what they want now. So because they know what they want most, and that's more important than what they want now, they choose what they want most. That is what discipline is. It's choosing what you want most. And usually what you want most is always long term, it's eternal, or it's more long term, it's bigger. It takes a lot more work, and it requires sacrificing what you want now. The things you think you want now, because the now often leads to a lot of instant gratification. So how do you get past instant gratification? By having something even bigger. Paul in the Bible says, "For the pain we endure now is nothing compared to the future glory that we shall see." This is Romans 8:18. And if you think about that very carefully, it shows you the wiring of the brain. That if you have, this is called foresight. If you have something big and glorious in the future that you desire to get to, you are willing to get through. Okay, and that's what even Nietzsche, the psychologist, Nietzsche, the philosopher, and also what's his name, Freud said, sorry, not Nietzsche, it was Freud who said, a man who knows his why can withstand any how. Okay, so whatever you're facing, you're able to go through. So I think why is it that people are struggling to be disciplined? We struggle with this concept of discipline is simply because it usually comes from a lack of vision. So I will alter this verse a little bit, and I know some will come for me on this, but I will alter this verse and say, where there is no vision, the people lack discipline. Wherever there's no vision, because that's one thing I've noticed about very disciplined people. There is something very clear they can see they're going towards. They can see it, and they're going for it so badly. They don't care what they have to go through to get to it. And that gives them that tunnel vision, that discipline, that drive to get them to get through everything that they need to overpower. And the question I think that I ask even as a nation is, what is it that's destroying our capabilities of having discipline? I keep saying, where is the 20 to 30 year vision of this country? What is Zambia 2050? What is Zambia 2064? What is Zambia 2100? Have we got pictures of these things? Or is it whenever we mention these things, that's too far? That's the mentality we always say. That's too far. Okay. And I've noticed that with us, the moment somebody says, think 20 years, 20, and this is usually the conversation I even get with finance. Guys, I tell people a retirement plan is a 20-year venture. 20, I mean, I have to wait that long to enjoy. That's where it goes wrong. Right there. The desire to have something long-term. That's why even in the book, Power to Change, which I recommend to so many people, he talks about looking at the real you, knowing yourself by your potential and the future you. And that's why I wanted to just quickly recap and to say, I believe that the difference between these economies, GDP, and for whatever reason you may call it, even if they're grabbing resources from our country, they've got discipline. That's why they're able to do it. We are not disciplined. The thing is, you can give an African a bottle of beer and he'll give you his land. That's how ill-disciplined we are. The majority of this continent was sold for mirrors and alcohol. Okay, it was sold for short-term things. Somebody came with small little trinkets. You've got more gold under your land, but then somebody gives you little shiny trinkets right now, and all of a sudden your land has been taken from you because you lack discipline. The things that get taken from you also come from the fact that you lack discipline. Why is it that we struggle whenever a mine, we decide to grab a mine and take it over? We lack the discipline. So I don't think Zambians lack capacity. I think we have enough degree holders. I think we have enough universities. We have enough intelligent people. We know where things are. We're exposed. Okay? We breathe the same air. We bleed the same blood as these people. We don't lack capacity. We lack discipline. Okay, that's the reality. We have the capabilities, by the way, to run every single institution in this country. We have the capabilities to run every power station. We have the capabilities to run every mine. We have the capabilities to run every bank. We can do all this stuff. In fact, guess what, Vernon? The employees of these companies are Zambians anyway. Okay, so why is it at the running of them phase, the owning phase, we have a problem? Because discipline is the most required for owning something. Discipline is more required than pitching up for work every day. Discipline is extremely important. And as a country, this is a conversation we have to have. People shouldn't be stressing when your president says work, people. When the country is calling for you to work. When we're now saying, guys, we need to manage our finances better as a nation. But why aren't they giving us? That reaction already tells me the number one problem in the Zambian population is discipline. Okay? And if it's failing at a personal level, so therefore it's now translating to a national level, and therefore these results start getting worse and worse and worse. Okay? These disparities. How are countries with half our population trouncing us? Because they have discipline. And the reality is the people who have discipline have power. They're able to control themselves. So I'm going to give you, I remember I gave you yesterday a quick sermon from my brother. Here's another, it's the same sermon, but he talks about where power truly comes from. And he talks about self-control and the importance of it. And listen to what he's talking about.
Would lead him into the place of Samson would end up in a place where his strength would lead him into the place of a harlot. I've realized that the men who will carry power are not men of strength, they are men of self-control. And so we need self-control. I'll show you how self-control will give power. The Bible says in the book of Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 23, he that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit than that taketh a city. So men who can subdue cities are not strong men. They are weak men that have acknowledged their weakness and said, Lord, I need your grace in order to not fall in this trap. See, Samson had a hidden issue, but everybody knew. Samson would go in the dark, but everybody saw him. Eventually the Philistines knew where to get him. They knew that if he beats us here, we'll find him in Gaza.
So I just wanted to give you that. That's a very simple thought, that the weaknesses that we find come from our self-control. And the most powerful people are the people who can overcome their own desires. You can subdue your own desires. This is why, Vernon, I'm on a journey to take 100 days of cold showers in the middle of winter. I'm on 45 days so far. And it's now people think it's strange, but think about it. If I can tell my body when there's hot water available that we are going to shower cold, then I can also tell my mind when there's cash available that we are going to save it instead of spending it. The ability to overcome the simple act of taking a cold shower every morning when there's hot water available, not to say, no, but as we just take cold, because you have no hot water. Some of you people, it's just no hot water. But when there's hot water available, and you still opt to take a cold shower or a cold bath, then you are telling yourself, you are telling your body that my mind and the logic of my mind is more important than the emotions and desires of my heart. It's more important. The logic and principles that we shall follow are more important. You can actually condition your brain to do what's good for you more than what feels good. Because this is the battle. This is the battle of self-control. Doing what's good for you more than what feels good. Okay? And this is where financial ill discipline comes from. This is where marital indiscretion comes from. This is where issues come from. It's about doing what's good versus doing what feels good versus doing what is good. Because what feels good often is good in the moment. But anything that does not cost any pain up front is going to cost you a greater pain later. And I keep telling people this. Any good thing that comes to you that does not cost you any pain up front will cost you great pain later. Okay, for China to have the economy it had right now, it had to go through the 90s where Chinese employees in factories were getting paid $190 a year, Vernon, $190 a year. But because of that, they got the Americans hooked on outsourcing all their industrial activity into China. And that built the Chinese industrial base. And then from 2000, they industrialized they urbanized their economy, industrialized at the same time, and boom, China is the power it is today. But it took them sacrificing in the 80s and 90s to the 2000s where they built. And in the 2020s, that's when we're talking about China, the great superpower that's now negotiating for creditor. Who was more important, Vernon, in our creditor negotiation? Was it America or China? China. Okay, that's the first time we've seen that, where China is leading negotiations. Why? Because of the sacrifices of the 80s and the 90s and the building process of the 2000s, the 2010s. It has led to the powerhouse China that we see today. But can we start thinking 40 years like that? By the way, China is operating on a 100-year plan. Think about that very carefully. That country is operating on a 100-year vision. They have a vision to become the #1 economy in the world. They set that vision in 1949, and they said that by the year 2049, we shall be. The people who declared that vision are not alive. They're not alive. They died. But they declared a vision upon a nation that people are building on person by person. They're adding to it brick by brick. Each generation, like a relay, each president has continued the work each Chinese family has built on. This is why it's natural for Chinese kids to say, this was my father's business. We're going to build on it as well. And this is where the problem that people should start having conversations about that are deeper and deeper, is that we need to make sure that that we're going further and further in these kind of conversation frameworks about building our discipline as a nation. So I think this is where I think that having a lot more discipline as people will then having discipline as a character. In fact, I've noticed what people say about the Chinese. They don't even say they're disciplined with money. We say Chinese are just disciplined people. Okay, have you noticed that discipline is their character? So it affects how they handle money, it affects how they handle work, it affects how they handle family. There are not that many. There are not that many Chinese children being raised without fathers around. But when you come to Africa, 1/3 of mothers are single mothers in Africa. Meanwhile, in China, it's only 1 out of 30 mothers are single mothers in China. Okay, I mean in Asia, in Pacific Asia. So you can see even the family discipline that we start to see. Discipline is not just in one area, it's across all their parts of their lives that it has become who they are. Now, the problem is we're trying to be only financially disciplined, only workplace discipline, only. But if we can be disciplined in all areas, in fact, it's one of the things you find with the Japanese. They're very disciplined across various areas of their life. And that's why I said that if we're going to attain financial freedom, the key to financial freedom, people, is financial discipline. If you can't be disciplined, and it seems antithetical that you mean I have to be controlled by a budget for me to be free one day. But in your brain, being free is just doing what you want, when you want, how you want it, and having no consequences. Life is not structured like that, Vernon. And I said it, if you go to Genesis 8:22, God says there will be seed time, there will be harvest. So for every seed you sow, be it positive or negative, there is a harvest, be it positive or negative. Okay? What you plant in your life will start to grow. And if you just keep it going as well, it will grow, whether it's positive or negative. So if you plant recklessness in your life now, you are going to harvest poverty in the future. You are going to harvest destitution. You're going to harvest issues. If you are reckless today, you will harvest issues tomorrow. Okay, that is what you need to recognize. And there will be a tomorrow that will come where you will harvest these issues. And that is what we have to always think about. This decision, this is what disciplined people think about. I love the conversation you gave about the actors who started saying, there's a debate that broke out yesterday. And I'll spin off to this. The Radical Entrepreneur announced that 30,830 people came to his Africa Must Think conference. Okay. And he said, look, we've grown from 10,000. The next year we had 13,000. Now we had 30,000. And, the usual gaggle of people. Yeah, these are just conferences. And, there's always statements. And I said yesterday, I said, 30,000 people going to a business conference, not going for drinking and dancing. And it's not a dig at musicians. Look, you have your life and everything. But the problem is that's the only place where we can get 30,000 people, either a political rally or drinking and dancing. And it's sad that's the problem. But a conference to do with business and entrepreneurship and everything. And I said, even if they're not, they're like, yeah, but doesn't mean anything if they're not going to implement. I'm like, even if they're not going to implement, I would still rather they're there, okay, than 30,000 people gathering to go and drink themselves to a stupor. Then the usual gaggle of comments start coming, Vernon, where you start hearing people saying, yeah, but you don't know, at bars, people make deals. What deals? How many people, what percentage of people in bars make deals, people? They don't. Okay, the only thing that people add to this world in bars is the illegitimate. Is now just they start adding children they didn't plan for or things that they just didn't want to do. This is what people do in bars. Okay, they wreck their lives. Most majority of people go to bars to wreck their lives. Okay. There are some people, yes, who enjoy a drink here and there, but there are many people who are taking their last money, they're taking their rent money, they're taking money that they should be doing to save. They're not taking money that's in excess. They haven't done all the right steps first, and then they've gone to go and enjoy a bottle or a drink. They've done that first, and then they're going to try and figure out, okay, where's my rent money going to come from? Where am I going to save from? They've gone in their drunken haze. That's when they now start figuring things out. There's a lot of ill discipline that happens in those places. So I would rather, yes, even if they're not going to implement, because implementing a business idea takes 5 to 10 years. They're not going to implement it next week. Only an emotionally driven, tempestuous child thinks that someone's going to come straight out of a business conference and become a straight up entrepreneur next week. Those are seeds sown where there are things you're going to be able to reference. Those are networks. Those are new habits you're building. because these are people, these are 30,830 people who are building the habit of spending their time listening to things that will build them. And yes, some of them will not utilize them, but at least we're giving ourselves more of a fighting chance when more people are going to things like that. We're giving ourselves a fighting chance because yes, somebody will be inspired, somebody will be taught, somebody will be determined, and a business will pitch up that will hire 50 to 100 people down the line. Okay, and another one, and another one, and another one. So this is the importance of those kind of things happening. And when more of us gather in places like that, we are giving ourselves more of an opportunity. I've sat in bars, people. I used to be young. I've been there. You can't trick me into thinking that at bars are where things are. There are no deals done there. People lie. No, we've got deals. I've got money. I'll see you on Monday. There's no Monday. You're not disciplined enough to pitch up on Monday for that meeting in the first place because you're high the next day, and you got no transport money on Monday to go and get to that meeting. That's what happens to most people. So stop lying to yourselves. They're not deals being done at bars. Okay. Yes, there's some people who sit down and have a drink and they make a deal, and that's what TV has taught you. But the majority of business is done through a lot more conventional means. Sales calls, meetings, presentations. That's where a lot of business is done. Afterwards, yes, they go and discuss later. But yes, there are social skills required. There's work events. If you're talking about drinks, Vernon, we're talking workplace events where the workplace creates maybe an event somewhere. That's where maybe some deals are done. But outside of that, where you're just at a tavern dancing the night away, you think anyone's going to discuss proper business there? It's gobbledygook half the time. So yes, people, I would rather people go to business conferences, go to finance conferences. I'd rather people are going to those things, picking up things. Yes, some of them are not going to change their lives with it, but a lot more people are going to than people who are dancing the night away. Now, I'm not saying that we can't go and dance and enjoy once in a while, but can we please have once in a while be the operative word to our dancing and grooving? Can we please have once in a while? Not we're generally grooving the night away, and then we are occasionally going to a conference here and there to go and learn. It should be we are generally learning and occasionally grooving. Do you see how it should work? But unfortunately, no. And people, we all live in this country. We've all driven past places. Tuesday night, Tuesday night, you'll be going somewhere. You can go to a shop. Okay. On my way to a Bible study we go to on Tuesday, there's a set of shops and there's a bar there full. And I keep thinking, Tuesday, where are these people going on Wednesday? Where they're going to be stumbling like this? Full, Vernon. And then you're going to tell me that no, those people are going to cut deals. They're not going to cut any deals. They're doomed. Okay, that is doomed behavior. And I've noticed this very carefully that the people, Vernon, we work with high-end individuals. The people who continuously save and invest money have a lot of discipline with their money. They're very disciplined. In fact, when you ask them, the majority of them, do you drink? You'll notice that the numbers are much smaller. Okay, the numbers are much smaller, Vernon, than the people who do. So, look, the reality I think people want to try and walk away from is they don't gamble. They don't drink much. Okay. If they drink very little, and quite a lot of them just don't even drink at all. All right. So if you sit down and you actually sit with people who have accumulated wealth up to a certain point and run businesses up to a certain point and have built their careers up to a certain point, you'll notice certain behaviors that they just don't do, that you keep thinking work. Because I don't know, Vernon, maybe some Snoop Dogg music video showed you that, no, Snoop does deals in the club when he's dancing. Who told you that? Who on earth told you that?
Even people who even talk about deals are very few. Most of them go there to have a good time. And I have had interactions with some of these same people who go and say, no, you meet people, you meet potential opportunities there and whatnot. Most of them have a good time and they actually scooch from one spot to the other. I think we should go to the other place. This place is no longer happening. I've seen people move from one mall to the other, just trying to find a more hyped up environment. you know. And I'm thinking at the end of the day, you've spent, I don't know how much money, and then you're expecting yourself to make more money from just a set of, pleasures, and, seeing that you're having a good time, and take a lot of photos so people can see that you're enjoying yourself, and talk about deals. What deals are you going to talk about when you're not sober minded? What
There's no
constructive
logic.
thing are you going to tell anybody?
And look, at the end of the day, that's why I was simply saying, you know, it's it's amazing in this country where we and I think even Vusi Tambukwayo said this. He said it's amazing that the people who discredit education are the ones who think knowledge is a scam. They're always quick to judge knowledge as a scam, but these are the same people who will give money to an online farming scam. These are the same people who think these football gambling things are investment. These are the same. I'll notice that you will catch the same people putting money into silly things. Okay. And then they'll tell you knowledge is a scam. These things are a scam. This business conferences are a scam. At least you're going away with knowledge. This is why, Bennett, I think the number one thing I'll tell anybody here is, as much of a joke as it is, whenever people are ransacking malls or shopping centers, tell me, Vernon, when you've ever seen a bookstore or a book stand. Somebody can leave their book stand there in the middle of Manda Hill or any of these stores. They can leave their books there and they won't get robbed. Nobody steals books. That already tells you something. Okay. It tells you the nature of this society. You leave a liquor store slightly open, it's going to get ransacked. But you leave a book stands in the middle of the road, everyone will leave it. They'll even move it aside and phone, hey, Mfetu, you left your book stand. Can you come and get it? Okay. Because we do not value knowledge. We do not value knowledge and we do not value wisdom. Okay. And this is the difference. What you'll notice about people who actually do build anything of substantial time is that they value wisdom and they live by it. Okay. So yes, they're not, and the difference, Vernon, is nobody who goes to a business conference is expecting instant results. If you go to those things expecting instant results, once again, we've got the problem of discipline. You lack the discipline because it's a habit of going to these things that gives you the knowledge and wisdom that you need, gives you the interactions. It puts you amongst like-minded business people to eventually build what you need to build. But if you think going to a single conference is going to result in a year later, all of a sudden you're there, you're the testimony. Look, I'm now standing. Then you are the problem again and again and again. Everything that has got good results in your life requires a repeated approach. It requires it being a habit. What do you see when Fidelity studies what's it called, millionaires? What do they find? They find that millionaires invest a lot in personal development and professional development. They go to conferences, they go to workshops, they go to trainings, not the government sponsored trainings where people go there for per diems. They go there with their own money. Okay. They go for training opportunities with their own money. They found that as a habit in their budget, they tend to spend on this more than they spend on entertainment. So, Vernon, the saying we've had before is, he said, if you plant maize, you'll get maize. Not if you plant soya, you get soya. And Dave Ramsey said, it's simple. If you do rich people things with money, you'll be rich people. If you do poor people things with money, you'll be poor people. So if a study of millionaires reveals that within the average millionaire's budget, the allocation for personal development is higher than the allocation for entertainment, and you are spending more on entertainment than personal development, Vernon, what are you doing? Rich people things or poor people things? Thank you. So that's what people need to recognize. You're doing poor people things with money. And doing poor people things with money is planting maize and expecting soya. That's exactly what you're doing, by the way. Okay? If it's there, the numbers are there to show it. That people who do this spend more on development than they do on entertainment. But because, and I think where I think we get it confused is our view of wealthy, Vernon, is rich athletes, okay, who, by the way, don't even party as much as we think. especially rich athletes. They don't. But our view of wealth is music videos. It's been tainted by music videos. Music videos have given you the view that when you are rich, you party those riches. That it's almost like a virus has been planted, especially amongst black men. A small little subtle virus has been put in us to make sure that whenever any money hits our hands, we hand it over to liquor companies and we go clubbing with it. That it's like a small little virus. And it's because that visual has been painted in your mind that we've associated rich with a music video. That's why the moment people get paid, there's even songs like Just Got Paid, Friday, those songs. And all you think about is make it rain. That's the mentality of wealth. Even when you read the book Capitalist N-Word, he's talking about this. That's your mentality of wealth. So wealth, according to the African mindset or the black mindset, because of the visuals we've given ourselves. And I'm not saying we're the only ones who do this. There are people in other races who do this, but they don't put it in their media. We're very careless to put this in our media. Okay, our music videos and everything, our music and everything shows us burning through money. And wealth is depicted by how quickly you can burn through money in one night, pouring liquor in the club, all this stuff. That mentality, okay, is what has driven us to not be able to retain cash and retain it into assets. It has driven us into that. That mentality of having to show people, it has driven us into this. So that's why I'm saying discipline at the end of the day, controlling yourself is actually one of the key factors and the key tenets of all of this. So let's go through the quick list, Vernon, of rich people things with money. Okay? What are rich people things with money? Because that is discipline. That is what we mean by, if people can now talk about it being disciplined from that perspective of doing rich people things with money, it helps. So rich people things with money is this simple list, people. I've shared it so many times. And if you've opted not to read it, then this is your discipline problem. That's why I said it has to be something you do over and over again. 94% of them live within their means. These are studies of people with millions of dollars of wealth in their net worth of investable assets. 94% of them live within their means. 75% of them have never touched credit. So if you are overblowing your budgets and you are constantly on credit, guess what? You are doing poor people things with money. Okay? And if you do poor people things with money, expect to be poor people. That's it. Okay? 80% of them made their millions investing for retirement and long-term goals that are like, Vernon, if you don't have retirement plans and investment plans and you haven't built out long-term investment plans, guess what? If you don't have long-term investment goals, and that's what it means by retirement planning, they've got long-term investment goals. If you don't have a long-term 20 to 30-year investment goal, guess what? You're doing poor people things with money. If you don't make regular investments into investment assets, you're doing poor people things with money. If you're not expecting this to take 28 years or at least 20 to 30 years, you're doing poor people things with money. If you're waiting for you to get a windfall for you to be able to start, because 79% of them start with zero inheritance. If you're saying, no, I started with this situation and that situation and my life started this, even Dumisani says, guys, excuses expire. Once you pass 30, your excuses have expired. They're gone. Okay, 79% of the millionaire class start with zero. 85% of the chief executive, no, when I become the boss of my workplace, that's when I can start building wealth. Then you're doing poor people things with money. No, if only I went to a top tier university. Then you're doing poor people things with money. No, when I start earning what the top 10% of Zambia, when I start earning 30 grand, that's when, then you're doing poor people things with money. Okay, there's the reality. It already tells you, this is the list of things that tell you. I want all of you who are watching this, score yourself on these things. Are you doing rich people things with money, or are you doing poor people things with money? Okay. Fidelity, another study, what does it say? They have a long-term focus. They plan for things that are 20 to 40 years away. If I tell you that something is going to take 20 to 40 years and you go, that's too far away, then guess what? You're doing poor people things with money. Okay, if a 30-year time horizon of investing and saving is too far away, you're doing poor people things with money. If investing in your professional development and certification, and investing in your professional development is going for conferences, going for trainings, getting certificates, going for learning programs, what are you studying at night for you to be able to earn more money? Okay, because Vernon, for you to earn more money, you have to learn something new, don't you? Mm-hmm. You think you can earn more money with the exact same skill set you've been failing to utilize for the last decade? You learn something new to earn more money. Okay, so if you're not learning something new, you're doing poor people things with money. Are you aggressive about growing your revenue? Are you constantly complaining about inflation? If you're doing the latter, where you're constantly whining about politicians and inflation, and you're not doing anything to grow your revenue in terms of learning more things so you can earn more money, you're doing poor people things with money. Okay, if you're waiting for, if your constant excuse is that you didn't inherit anything, you're doing poor people things with money. If you're keeping your money in cash and you're constantly afraid to put it into any single investable asset, you're doing poor people things with money. If you don't follow advisors or have a financial advisor who's certified, you're doing poor people things with money. And if you're concentrating all your wealth into a single asset instead of just diversifying it across a set of them. Now, I'm not saying instantly you diversify. I'm saying if you don't have a plan to kind of broaden this out, you're doing poor people things with money. What did they find about millionaires from the millionaire next door? 94% of them were married. They're family oriented because family makes people long term thinkers, Vernon. When a person has a child, they all of a sudden start thinking long term. That's the difference. Family actually is connected to long term thinking. Running away from your family is connected to short term thinking. Okay, guys, I hope that sinks in. 50% of them graduated from public colleges. They didn't wait. So if you're saying, if I only went to an elite college, that's poor people things with money. They're 86% of them are first generation millionaires. They didn't wait for them to get. Poor people think they're doing, if you're waiting for inheritance, poor people things with money. If you're saying, this thing of working more than 40 hours a week, you're doing poor people things with money because they work very hard. The 70% of them live on a strict budget. So if you're failing to adhere to a budget, you're doing poor people things with money. If you're buying if you're buying luxury cars way out of your wealth state and way out of your financial budget, guess what, Vernon? You're doing poor people things with money. So discipline is doing these things, people. Confident investing, working in fields they've studied. These people are disciplined in these areas. They're not people who came from special circumstances. They are regular people who do regular things with money right. And all of us have to start learning to be disciplined. And if we can start learning to be disciplined as people, then the result will be that we'll get very good outcomes. Okay. And then we'll manage. And there's a question here about CDFs where one person, I think your program should be broadened to other platforms also, so that citizens can start. And I'll share this again, so that citizens can start. Can start gaining or having financial discipline, especially at the time when CDF money across all constituencies, decentralization process has been trusted by us politicians to the ground by putting 23.8 million kwacha on the ground. It's not easy for the women, the youth, and the people who are accessing these monies for either CDF or central government to operate well their businesses. I can't see the rest of that and think we'll pick it up. Sorry about that, sir. But one of the things that I will say is everybody has to be disciplined. It's not just the politicians. I've seen this with the citizens. We demand that our politicians be disciplined, but we haven't noticed that our people are not. Okay? Our people are not disciplined. Okay? So everything has to boil down to this conversation of discipline. And that's why I kind of brought it back to this point. So whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's investing, whatever it is, it all boils down to a conversation of discipline. And if we want to see, and this is what Vusita Mugwaya was saying in his speech, in his speech on Activate, he was saying your character, and specifically your character, is always going to be shaped, Vernon, by your disciplines. Have you noticed people will call you what you do a lot? Have you noticed that? If you drink a lot, you notice you're called a drinker. You know that if you play around a lot, you notice you're called playful. This one is. Have you noticed that what you do becomes what you are when you do it a lot? So discipline is simply it's the avenue that takes your actions and turns them into your identity. Notice that if you save once, you've saved money. But if you save money all the time, you are a saver. Okay? If people can consistently see this habit of saving money, you become a saver. You invest money once, you've invested money. You do it all the time, you are an investor. So the way to turn an action into an identity is through becoming disciplined. And if you do it long enough, it becomes your identity. And once it becomes your identity, it becomes automatic. Okay? You notice, Vernon, that's why I said yesterday, you notice that at the first time you use WhatsApp, you never went straight to it. But today, when you pick up your phone, it's instinct for you to go to WhatsApp. Why? Because you've done it so many times. You've no longer become a person who uses WhatsApp. You are a WhatsApp user. It has become who you are now. It's become part of your identity. So just think about it. If you do something long enough, it becomes your identity. So all you have to do is get through that first identification phase where you are now weaving the action into your identity. That's what we need to start getting through as a generation. Sorry, yeah, I think Mr. Mutwale finished reading that message. They are questions on debt restructuring as you go down. What I will remain, I think we just ran out of time a bit. Sorry about that, sir. But please tune in tomorrow. I will go through that specific question at the beginning, and I'll make sure our team make sure we have it at the beginning, especially on debt restructuring. We'll be going through that. We'll be back on that conversation because there are some things that we are looking at going forward. Right, Vernon?
Absolutely.
Back to you.
Have a good day. Enjoy the last day of the weekend.
There are no weekends for me, Vernon. There are no weekends. God bless everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. For everyone who's with us, Bisa, Olivia, Diofista, thank you so much for joining us.